Good morning and go Devils. Welcome into the PHNX Sun Devil Show, coming to you live from Studio K, presented by Circle K. Make sure you join Inner Circle for free by downloading that Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit circlek.com for details. We are live early today because, well, we've got some bad news for Arizona State fans. That's right, Jayden Quaintance is entering the transfer portal. Make sure you hit that like button, drop a comment, how you feeling, and also subscribe to PHNX Sports. I'm Anthony Totri, joined on this emergency pod by the one, the only legend himself, Ralph Amsden. We've got Captain Redbeard behind the Mac making all of the magic happen. Guys, I imagine there's going to be a lot of emotions, a lot of frustrations. Like I said, make sure you let us know in the chat, and we'll try to get to all of the comments that we possibly can. We got Joshua in here, Erica, Will, JJB, the Sun Devil sicko himself. The 5-star freshman, Jayden Quaintance, at one point the youngest player in college basketball, is entering the transfer portal. When he was healthy, one of, if not the best Arizona State Sun Devil on the court for Bobby Hurley's squad, but it doesn't look like he will be back next season. Ralph, how we feeling, man?
I brought visual representation. So this is me at the start of every day, happy clown. And then this is me after you text message me to do a guest appearance on your show every single time. So
it's sadness, man. I feel like that's got to be how a lot of ASU fans are feeling, especially if we go back like just 2.5 weeks. Because I think Sun Devil Nation, as it relates to ASU hoops, that fan base was like, okay, you know what? This season, we chalk it up. It's gone. It's whatever. It wasn't good by any means. You had injuries. Maybe there were depth problems. The rotation wasn't always the greatest thing in the world. But hey, look on the bright side. We're still in the mix for Koa Pete. Josan Sannon still hasn't announced he's in the portal. Jayden Quaintance still hasn't announced he's in the transfer portal. And guess what? It's portal season, so we can go get some top-tier guys of ourselves. Oh, and we still have to play in the first round of the college basketball crown. So there was some sort of like, okay, we can be optimistic, like you had your prop there. We were all kind of happy clowns at that point. But if you look at the offseason checklist, which quite literally consisted of 4 things for me, which was land Koa Pete, not sure if you saw it, didn't get him, he went to your rival. Keep Josan Sannon. He hit the portal. He is now St. John's Johnny. Keep Jayden Quaintance. Well, here we are today. That's not happening. And then in terms of adding top-tier talent in the transfer portal, I'm not going to go as so far to say that the guys that Arizona State has added are otherworldly game changers right away for ASU. So the offseason checklist for Bobby Hurley, it's got to be pretty bad in my estimation, and this is just the icing on the cake. This was the one guy on the roster, Ralph, that I feel like if you manage to keep him, and we had people in the comments of post-game shows this past season saying, I can live with Hurley for another year if you keep Jayden Quaintance. Obviously, a guy that is going to be he's a projected NBA lottery pick in 2026. And now here we are, April 2nd. None of those things have realistically come to fruition. And you lost the one guy realistically on the roster that was sort of giving ASU fans some hope for what's left of the Bobby Hurley tenure.
Yeah, do you want me to add to that or start crying? What's the best supplemental thing that I can do in this moment? Sannon, great shooter. Would have loved to have him back. I really enjoyed Jayden Quaintance. I'm raised in Wyoming fan. He reminds me of Theo Ratliff. Only when Theo Ratliff, uh, it was when Theo Ratliff was a sophomore that he was averaging 9 and 7 with 4 blocks. Um, Jayden did that as a 17-year-old. His ceiling is so high, and it would have been fantastic if this was a place where he could develop. However, when you got his dad on social media complaining about our offense in the same way that regular fans who might not know ball as well do, then you have to figure that there's a problem if we're all seeing the same thing. So I don't think it's a surprise. I didn't know about the injury. I really bummed for him, but this is somebody who I looked forward to if we were going to retain anybody through a full 4 years graduation, cap and gown, or even 3 years and watch him go into the NBA, whatever it was. That was something that I was looking forward to more than keeping Shannon, more than landing, Koa Pete, which, getting Jayden Quaintance is what opened up the door to the idea that we can land these type of recruits. So all in all, just not great news. And I really don't know what to say at this point because he's not someone you can replace. So what do
He
you do?
really isn't. Projected top 5 pick in the 2026 NBA draft, Big 12 all freshman team, Big 12 all defensive team. He was a guy that, and again, kind of getting ahead of myself, which shame on me for doing that. Looking to next season in terms of, okay, how can we build this Arizona State roster? You're like, okay, you've got Jayden Quaintance, the defensive prowess that he has. Maybe it's like, okay, we can build around him. I said it literally on Monday's show. I'm like, how do you keep him? Well, you build around him, right? You say,
Yeah.
hey, Jayden Quaintance, this is your program. You have the keys for the year. Go get me an extension if I'm Bobby Hurley, right? You go add Frankie Collins, which I have no problem with. I loved Frankie when he was here. I think in terms of what that does defensively, that would have been massive for an Arizona State team that struggled to play defense last year. You get a true point guard in him. You have Mo coming off the bench. And again, I think this whole show is just going to be me going back to how you started it. I feel like a sad clown for thinking that this was a real possibility. And I know there's a bunch of people in the chat that are upset about it as too. Joshua in the chat saying nothing is going to change. We should have fired him years ago and gone all in and tied Golden. Regardless, Hurley isn't going to do anything next year. He's not a good coach. Period. Do you feel like this move for Quaintance is more of an indictment on Bobby Hurley in the roster and the coaching staff, or just more so of where we're at in college athletics today, where we're going to go to not only the highest bidder, but maybe a program that we can see developing us into that top 5 projected lottery pick?
There's no indictment on Bobby Hurley for having the same results that he's always had. There's no indictment on Bobby Hurley. We're going to blame Bobby Hurley for having Bobby Hurley results? Absolutely not. The egg is on our face as a university and as fans. We're the ones that look stupid, are stupid, whatever. Because let's really get into the weeds here. Because Jayden Quaintance leaving opens the door for us to do some self-examination. It feels like maybe we do too much self-examination without the actual, resulting change. But think about it, man. There's got to be some restaurants out there that you eat at that have put you in a bad way, but it
Count.
tastes good and you go back, right? And
Yeah.
I don't want to air out any potential future sponsors for PHNX, so I'm not going to throw anything out there. But I did have a Twitter thread go viral one time about a particular restaurant that was that for me. That it took me about 20 times going back before I Twitter searched, hey, are other people having the same issues as me? And ended up finding about 4 million tweets that, like, not only are people getting sick, they're very comfortable posting about how sick they are. Yet they go back, and I was going back. And so let's go back. Let's talk about what's happened at Arizona State in Bobby Hurley's tenure when he has landed high-level recruits. So let's go back about 9 years and start with Andre Spite. Remember him? We're only going 4-star and above here. Okay.
Okay.
He shot 34% here. He doubled his stats and raised his field goal percentage 100 points at Northern Colorado.
Wow.
So that's one of two things, because you hear Northern Colorado and you'd be like, oh, he wasn't ASU material. Well, who thought he was? That's an evaluation issue. It's either a development issue, a retention issue, or an evaluation issue. So we can try, and well, I'm going to go through every single. So hold on to your butts. We're going to hit every 4-star and 5-star recruit. Okay. Romello White. Romello White was actually here for I think 3-4 years. His best per 40 in his college career was as a freshman. It wasn't close. So and he left. So that's either a development issue or a retention issue. Sam Cunliffe. He started 9 games here and then bailed because he wanted to be closer to home. So he went 200 miles further from Seattle to Lawrence, Kansas, where he did not play, and then finished out, I think, playing for Walter McCarty or something at Evanston, where he also wasn't good. That was a retention issue for sure. Also an evaluation issue. Can't put the development on Bobby Hurley there. We'll talk about Jethro Tashumpa. He averaged 1-1, then left. What is that? Is that an evaluation issue and a retention issue? Probably. Where there was one class where it seemed to buck the trend, and that was Kamani Lawrence and Remy Martin. Now, I don't think you can blame Remy Martin for what happened, or blame Bobby Hurley for what happened to Remy as a senior, not being engaged. That was an eternity to be in college basketball. And so, I don't have anything negative to say about Remy Martin or his contributions here. And I thought Kamani Lawrence made some decent progress. So that I feel like is the one outlier. Other than that, there aren't any. Elias Valtonen, he made 17 shots here total and then left the country. That's certainly a retention issue. Tayshaun Cherry, Grand Canyon Antelope.
The above.
Yeah. P.S. There are no antelopes in America. They're all pronghorns. So GCU, just so you know. Jalen House left and became who he thought he was at New Mexico.
A dog.
Yeah, not who we thought he was, who he thought he was. And it happened elsewhere. Alonzo Verge left. He raised his field goal percentage 60% after he did. Khalid Thomas left. He was here for a year before going to Portland State. That could be certainly an evaluation issue. You probably don't expect 4-star players to be out at Portland State. Josh Christopher and Marcus Bagley, that was there's probably some words that the broadcast corporations don't allow you to say. I know we say them here on PHNX, so you can think them about their tenure here. And then I got 5-star Enoch. He made 33 shots here. That was pretty cool.
Gee. Where is he these days? He went to what? Fresno State?
He finished this year at Nova, scoring 2 points a game.
God.
And then Austin Nunez, really cool to get him back, but he's never averaged more than 5 points a game. And he's a 4-star and above. And so, it's very, very cool that, we landed Sanin and we landed Quaintance. But what have we ever done with somebody who we are told is a fringe NBA talent or projects to the first round of the NBA? Did that transfer from Kansas in the Sam Cunliffe trade? He did nothing for us.
It's just,
it has literally never worked out outside of Remy and Kamani Lawrence that we met somebody's potential and or exceeded it as the highest of high-level recruits. It has literally never happened. So for us to lose Jayden Quaintance, I don't think that's a Bobby Hurley issue. I think that's just us going back to the same restaurant that puts us on the toilet for 45 minutes once a week for the rest of our lives.
God, how do I get off this ride? Can the restaurant close down? Can I stop going back? Because you bring up all of these former 4-stars and 5-stars. And then I think, and there's people in the chat, you can look to other guys that maybe didn't have that quote unquote pedigree coming to college, right? I think most recently, a guy like Jemiah Neal, who it felt like year after year took such baby steps to getting to that point of the potential, which we saw at times. I remember the Pac-12 tournament. He had an absolute tear, I believe, against USC. Even in the Arizona game, he had played well. And you hope that he would come back. We're like, okay, we're going to give you the keys to this car. And when he came back, it was he didn't take the jump. And I don't know how many people at that point in time said, oh, maybe he's just not ready, or maybe this is realistically what his ceiling is. And then you turn on the first round of the NCAA tournament this year and you go watch Creighton, and Jemiah Neal single-handedly won that game for Creighton. Like, he elevated. Not only did he leave Arizona State, he went to a program in Creighton that is an NCAA tournament team just about every single year, it feels like, and he soared. There are a number of players I feel like you can point to. You brought up a guy like Jalen House, right? He went off in the NCAA tournament. New Mexico, right? Or New Mexico State, one of the two.
New Mexico, yeah.
New Mexico. Like, it's just so painful, I feel like, for Arizona State fans to see this. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure they're happy. I think there are a very slim percentage of Arizona State fans that see former Sun Devils go succeed in college basketball and get angry about it. For me, it's more so like, man, we saw that. Or for, in Jalen House's case, like, good for him for being able to believe in himself and go take it to the next level. So when Bobby Hurley last year was able to go get a Josan Sanin, a Jayden Quaintance, an Amir Ali, it was the greatest recruiting class that Hurley's had in his decade here. And you're like, okay, maybe this is the flipping of the switch. Maybe something can change. Maybe it wasn't Hurley. Maybe it had something to do with the other guys or the state of the program, or had something to do with the conference at that point in time, or whatever excuse that we wanted to tell ourselves. And here we are, April 2nd, I believe less than a full year after getting some of these guys. Sanin's gone to a team that was just a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. Quaintance is going to have his pick of the litter of wherever he wants to go for a year, go make a ton of money, probably ball out, assuming everything is intact with his knee and his ACL. And where is Arizona State? Right now, Amir Ali is the only guy left in that recruiting class. And don't get me wrong, I like Amir Ali. I think, again, a guy that maybe I'm already turning myself into the happy clown here of like, okay, well, this kid's got a lot of potential. What can he be next year if we have a bunch of pieces around him?
Do you think he'll keep shooting 37%?
Well, you hope it improves, right? Like, that's I feel like the madness here is every year it's like, oh, you lost this guy. And again, part of that I don't want to totally blame on Hurley, because everybody enters the transfer portal in today's day and age, or at least a good chunk of them do. But usually you're able to retain your guy, the guy that is the face of your program moving forward. And that was certainly Jayden Quaintance this past season, regardless of him not playing down the stretch because of injury, whatever. I think everybody that was at DFA at one point this season, when they were watching Jayden Quaintance, they were saying, hey, this is our future. Regardless of how long it's going to be, Jayden Quaintance can get us what we need to do, right? And how many months removed are we from just seeing the front office sports stuff with James Harden, where James Harden spent significant money on this roster? And what is left of it? Nothing. There is nothing left on this roster. And I think in terms of hope in moving forward, it's a big question mark for Arizona State hoops, because you've missed on every single part of this offseason checklist. Hurley's not getting an extension going into next year. So do you have a lame duck coach, or do we flip it and say, okay, well, the money that you were spending on a Josan Sanin and a Jayden Quaintance, does that go get us some stars right now? And in reality, are there any guys in the transfer portal realistically? And I don't know every single name in the portal right now, but I can't think of one that has the potential and the talent of a Jayden Quaintance and a Josan Sanin. I just don't know if they're out there right now.
Well, not many people who are 6'9" are averaging three blocks a game as a 17-year-old. That level of rim protector who can track the ball and also has underdeveloped skill set and is still coming into their own athleticism and is aggressive on the offensive end, and is willing to box out, and is willing to bang down low and stuff like that. No, there's not There's not a replacement. It's like the Cam Scadaboo conversations. There's not a replacement. And I know Marcus Arroyo went on Yogi Roth's podcast and he said it's going to be fun to figure out how to replace those numbers, but you don't replace with one. And so if Arizona State was to do it, they're probably not going to cobble together 4 players out of the transfer portal who combined average 3.5 blocks a game. It's just not going to happen. And so, I think a big judge of what somebody's ability is what are they done? What have they done with what they're given? And while I appreciate James Harden, I am grateful every single day that he chose Arizona State. I am grateful every single day that he's developed an adulthood long habit of contributing financially to situations that might not necessarily be permanent, but are fun for the time period that you're enjoying them, which makes ASU basketball under Bobby Hurley the perfect place to set some cash on fire. And I love that about him, and I hope that he continues to do it. However, I'd like to win, and I'd like some semblance of consistency. And I made the mistake of visiting Clemson in the middle of the tournament and meeting Dabo Swinney and having him talk about how the plan for retention starts before you're even on campus. Not just in how we're going to get you and develop you, but whether you're made of what it would take to be developed. And for us as Arizona State fans, it's just been, we got a player good. Oh, a recruiting service said they were good. Great. And then we see what we do with them. And it has not once, outside of probably Remy, lived up to potential. Not once. Now, if you're talking about 3-star recruits or Obi Aleka or Trey Holder or guys like that, then yeah, that's great. That's always good to see. But why even chase 4 and 5 stars if you can't do anything with them? Right? Like what is the Leonardo DiCaprio dating a bunch of 23-year-olds if he's never going to put a ring on it? It's just to kill time. And that's all we're doing at Arizona State basketball. We're just murdering time. Just murdering it.
Ralph, I love having you on because it feels like you step up to the plate every single time and you just hit dinger after dinger after dinger. It's truly incredible stuff. And I agree with you. It feels very, very just it's a sickness. It's a sickness is what it is in terms of, like, at least I think the fan perspective of being like, okay, we're going to dive back into whatever this is going to look like next season. But in reality, and I don't want to get it misconstrued here, this is not by any means a judgment on how the fans feel. I think fans every single year in college sports should be able to feel that, should be able to feel like this could be their year. And I feel like in today's era of college sports, don't get me wrong, there's the knocks on the current state of NIL and the transfer portal. But part of what makes that fun is you can go into a year and you can say, hey, we've got this guy, this guy, this guy, and we have a chance, right? And I hate making this comparison because it feels so just on completely different sides of the spectrum. But Kenny Dillingham in Arizona State football, they just had the most successful season that a Sun Devil football program has had since the 90s, since I have been alive. And what did they do to ensure that they were able to try and run it back next year? Well, they said, hey, we've got 2 guys very specifically that we need to retain. 2 guys that are likely NFL draft picks at key positions, and Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson. We need to lock those guys up. And you're crazy if you don't think that those conversations happened well before the college football playoff actually started, right? So that is an example of a coach at Arizona State that not only can retain the talent, but they can evaluate the talent and they can keep the talent. Something that, to your analogy earlier, in terms of going through each and every 4 or 5 star that didn't work out at Arizona State, it felt like a retention issue, an evaluation issue, a financial issue, like just a number of different things, a development issue. And for Kenny to do this in just a couple of seasons, to be able to say, hey, we're keeping our guy. We're keeping a top 3 quarterback in college football, a top 5 wide receiver in college football. And then you go literally a street over to the basketball facilities. And it's like, okay, well, what's going on here? Well, it's all on fire. Our 5 stars are gone, going to be dispersed across the country. The local phenomenon in Koa Pete that would have really injected some life and some athleticism into this program actually went about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours south of here to your rival, a rival that was just in the Sweet 16. And where are you at? Just sitting there like, oh, well, we can't just chalk this up to being in the transfer portal anymore. So those messages about, oh, it's everybody enters the portal or blah, 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 blah. Yes, but to my point earlier, most programs lose role players. I'd be comfortable losing role players. I think the fan base would be comfortable losing role players. But when you lose your star, it's a problem. And to what you said earlier, Ralph, it's a problem that is reoccurring every single year. It's bad.
It's never not been a problem. Never. God. So what do we do in this situation? Because I feel like I'm an optimist. I've never once called for Bobby Hurley to be fired. Also, that's not my responsibility. I don't have anything to do with that. I can just express how I feel. I'll say this. I walked out of the house wearing this today. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, the headquarters of the ACC. They know ball out here. I didn't know what happened with Jayden Quaintance. I was just walking around, whistle while I work, bluebird on my shoulder. I get this text from you, and I was like, I was in public. I was at Publix. I was out there wearing maroon and gold, all while like my school is a huge embarrassment again for the 50,000th time in the last 10 years on the internet. And the Koa Pete thing, I think I was probably down to my last, well, at least, but now we're in a situation where it's like, okay, let's look around and what do we have left? Okay. So, is the head coach of the program a beloved local figure? Does he engage on a local level that would make you think that, like, well, at least we have this representative of this university who understands, what he has. And I think there are some questions to ask in that arena as well. I love PHNX. I love everything that you guys do. The OG thing for me here is Speak of the Devils. I think Brad Denny does a fantastic job with Joe Healy. They've had that show on forever. That is I think it's actually the oldest podcast and longest running podcast in the state of Arizona. Bobby Hurley has been here a decade. Has he ever been on that show? No. And I'm not like, that's not meant to be like the kill shot or anything. It's just meant to say that that's the damn layup. That's the damn layup. Reaching out to your fan base is the layup. But we're out here shooting ISO threes. I want anybody who has any connections in the state of Arizona to AZ Compass Prep, Dream City, Bella Vista, all of these programs. I want you to talk to the directors of those programs who are elite collectors of talent from all over the country, for people who have kind of like professionalized basketball at the high school level and or post-grad level. I want you to ask about what Bobby Hurley's relationship is at the local level, because what my job is outside of being an Arizona State fan is covering high school recruiting. And before that, I was the managing editor of Devil's Digest and the recruiting editor of Devil's Digest. And so I had to be plugged in on whether or not he had good relationships around the state. He does not. He has never. When people talk about Arizona State being a sleeping giant, I've always, in anything I've ever done on Sun Devil Spaces, I've always tried to tell people the sleeping giant is not the university and it's not the teams. It's the fan base. It's the fan base, and it's everything that you've done at PHNX alongside Eric and and everybody else that you've worked with to try to stoke the fire of waking up the sleeping giant, which is not the school, which is not the program. It's the alumni base. It's the current students. It's the fans. That's the giant. The support is the giant, not the product. It has never been the product. Is Bobby Hurley maximizing his effort to wake up the sleeping giant, to access the fans? Or has a lot of what has happened that is positive in the Bobby Hurley era happened outside of his influence? The curtain of distraction made the news forever. Did Bobby come up with it? Or was that the sleeping giant waking up a little bit? So you do have to reach these points of self-examination and look at everything you've done. Okay, so we can recruit. We cannot develop. We cannot retain. We do not have good local relationships. We do not take the layups with the media. Okay, so then let's get down to maybe like the bottom of the barrel base stuff. Searching deep in our backpack for literally anything that we can cling to. How's his temperament? If you
Right.
go to an ASU game at DFA and you watch him rage on an official, I want you to listen to what the Blue Hairs have to say, because they're embarrassed by it. They're embarrassed to be there. They pat their knee. Oh, here we go. I was at the UC San Diego game this year, moving from section to section, just talking to fans. And that was a game we won, and people left with a bad taste in their mouth because he came into the game pissed off. And I get that he can't eat on game day, right? But if every single time you or I entered a pressure situation, we were emotionally erratic and did things that no evidence in the history of college sports have ever shown that if you ride somebody, that it will come back to you in a positive way. In fact, the best way to make sure that an officiating crew who is already doing a bad job continues to do a bad job is to take their focus away from the game and put it on you. And you can paint it as a motivational tactic if any of your players have ever been motivated to move past the point at which we were told by highly valued scouts all over the country that, hey, this person's a 4-star. They might have a shot at being a professional in Europe or somewhere else. Hey, this person's a 5-star. They're probably going to be a lottery pick, the first round pick when they're done. Why is every miss an Arizona State Sun Devil? Why? So it's normal. It's normal to ask these questions, and I also think that you can certainly arrive at the conclusion like, oh, well, we need change, we need change, we need change. And you brought up hope, right? Hope is the only thing that gets people out of bed in the morning. Why would it not also apply to sports? It's double for sports. Hope creates investment. If there is a possibility that the way that I spend my time, energy, and resources can be something that is rewarding for me, I am more likely to do it. And what have we gotten out of the last 10 years? And yeah, people will say we scheduled better, we made the tournament more. Has it been a replicatable issue, or is it, I don't know. I want, my optimist brain is taken over, and I want to recognize the fact that Arizona State has done some positive things under Bobby Hurley, but it hasn't been with their best recruits. Not yet. Not outside of one recruiting class ever. So what are we doing here? And if it's a matter of resources that we can't make a change, then it is what it is. But you have to reconcile the fact that what that is going to do is curtail any investment or interest in your program outside of people being upset, which is what's happening right now.
Look, guys, we have still a ton to get into in terms of hope. What's next for Jayden Quaintance? What does this all mean for the future of Bobby Hurley? Where does Arizona State go from here? But we are going to take just a quick break. Look, if you are here in the Valley, then you know within the next week and change, the weather is going to start getting hot, and it's never too early to take care of your backyard. We're talking all pro shades, guys. You can extend your outdoor living space with a custom fit awning, hundreds of designs and colors to choose from to match any home. Not to mention it's motorized and track with a remote control, all with LED lighting to light up your patio under the awning. Call our friends over at All Pro Shades. Get the install, get the estimate out there. Maybe have a beautiful, beautiful backyard barbecue by the pool. You can watch what's left of the NCAA tournament. Also, when we're talking about our friends over at All Pro Shades, they're the most trusted local shade company, voted #1 by Ranking Arizona for patio shades in 2024. Not to mention they've been in business in the Valley for 20 years. Call 623-204-1476 or visit allproshadeconcepts.com now to schedule your free estimates. Also, want to tell you about our friends at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Look, we've got the Cardinals Draft Day Watch Party on April 24th. Join Bo, Johnny, and all of those Cardinals diehards, not to mention our dog, Damon Dog, at Gila River Resorts Casinos Wild Horse Pass in the Upper Deck Bar and Grill for an unforgettable NFL draft party and live show presented by Circle K and Gila River. We have a lot of events over at Gila River Resorts Casinos. We have fantasy draft parties. We've got watch parties, but my personal favorite, in all honesty, is, of course, this Cardinals Draft Day party. It's something that you just can't replicate anywhere else. Remember, you do you. At Gila River Resorts Casinos, visit playathila.com for more details. Guys, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, drop a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. Want to get to a couple comments in the chat. Cactus Johnny saying, I got invited to summer practice, took my family only to see Bobby curse out the team and make them run lines in front of a small group of season ticket holders. Kids were clearly pissed. John in the chat also saying his players constantly getting dismissed as well. Year over year. And I don't want to say that this is 100% on Bobby when we're talking about player dismissals and certain things, because there are a number of things that I've heard about individuals within the Arizona State basketball program that maybe lose their cool from time to time. But you look at the last, 4 years, 5 years, if it's been that long, and you can point to a player getting dismissed or leaving the program midseason just about every single year. This past year, BJ Freeman. You go back the year before, Jose Perez left. You go back either a year or two before that, and you had Marcus Bagley. We're talking 3-4 years in a row. There's a guy that starts on the team that, in theory, we're like, okay, this is a guy that's going to contribute. When Marcus Bagley was here, he was the guy that we gave the keys to, in theory, right? We're like, this kid has so much potential. He's going to be in the NBA. He's got a brother in the NBA, whatever. And I know there were some other things relating to Marcus Bagley that ultimately led to why he didn't finish his career at Arizona State. But that's a guy that, again, if you want to go back to the evaluation, the retention, etc., a guy that didn't work out, he left the program. Jose Perez. The way Bobby Hurley coaches basketball is the perfect way for Jose Perez to be at Arizona State. He was your ISO guy. He was a guy that we could move everybody else, and Jose Perez could just take a dude one-on-one. He's either getting a bucket or he's going to the charity stripe, right? He left before the Pac-12 tournament. Just said, sayonara, I'm leaving the country, okay? That didn't work out. BJ Freeman, your leading scorer on the season. Deuces. We're gone, right? And the program doesn't want to say it was a dismissal, all sorts of things. And I think part of these things go back to the point that you made about the temperament issue. I think there is a tendency for Arizona State players on the basketball team to mirror their coach in the way that he coaches, the quote-unquote passion that turns to anger, frustration, just jawing at the refs for the entirety of a game. And the players see that, and they move forward with that, right? Marcus Bagley, he had his own problems, okay? Jose Perez, I don't realistically think that he had a ton of anger, whatever, but he was a guy that it felt like he knew he was the guy on the team, right? BJ Freeman, I mean, do we even have to talk about what happened in the Arizona game? Headbutted a dude, issues with coaches behind the scenes, gone. Like, this is something that can't keep recurring. And that is more of a conversation as it relates to Hurley, but that's what almost makes this worse, is Jayden Quaintance wasn't that type of player. Joson Sandin wasn't that type of player. These were kids. These were 17, 18-year-old kids that you could look at play ball, and you're like, these kids can be stars if they are surrounded by the right talent, right? And this is a Quaintance show. So look, this is what Jayden Quaintance did this past season as a 17-year-old at Arizona State. Averaged 9.4 points per game, shot higher than 50% from the floor, 52.5%, 7.9 boards a game, and 2.6 blocks a game. As a true freshman, as the youngest player in college basketball at one point. And like I said earlier, a dude that was all-conference defensive team. He was a projected, and still is a projected, top 5 lottery pick in the NBA. He was an all-defensive player. Like, it's just, it's pain, and it is what it is. And before we get to the rest of what's left for Hurley, I do want to have a quick chat about where we think could be a good fit for Jayden Quaintance moving forward, because this kid was a top 10 prospect at his position coming out of high school. He was a nationally ranked player. He had, at that point, every school under the sun asking for his talents. I believe he was committed to Kentucky at one point before Calipari went to Arkansas. So is there a reunion there? Is it hey, I'm watching what Houston is doing, and it feels like if we can pair Jayden Quaintance with Kelvin Sampson in terms of just the defensive mentality, I think that's a coach that could certainly get the most out of Jayden Quaintance. Is there another school that we're missing? What say you, Ralph? Let's see. Are we? I think you still might be muted. You wanna hop out? Oh, we're back. We're back. Okay.
So you're going to want to have him somewhere where he can take advantage of his skill set. So you look out and you look for other high level NCAA programs where they've made solid use of their rim protectors, and then you factor in whether or not that program has money, right? And there are a lot of programs that actually have a surprising amount of resources, and a big part of that is they're basketball only, right? And so you have somewhere like Creighton, right, where Ryan Kalbrenner had 93 blocks this season. Now he's 7'1", but you bring in a 6'9" guy with a 7'4" wingspan to play in a similar position, and maybe he can have a similar impact. Top 15 in blocks this year. You have Nate Biddle at Oregon. Again, that's another 7-footer. But you also look at the development of Johnny Broome over time at Auburn, and that's somebody who is 6'10" and blocked 74 shots this year. And so, you have to believe that he's going to be in demand and that he can play anywhere, because he's a high effort guy with a huge wingspan that understands how to protect the rim and has an unlimited ceiling on what he's going to be able to do as a post player. So people should really be falling all over themselves to go and get him. And from what I've seen in the past, ACL surgery doesn't necessarily take away. You've had guys out there that are 6'10", like Antonio McDyess, who went from being Sean Kemp to being a back down fadeaway 18-footer guy, right, at 6'10", and maybe didn't block as many shots, but had that kind of veteran metal. But again, his injury happens in his mid-20s, and that happens 30 years ago without the advances in surgery and rehab and everything like that. So I think he'll probably come back just fine. I think anybody would want him, and it's not like centers that actually contribute and are athletic enough to make an impact while they're still figuring it out offensively. They're not a dime a dozen. They're what everybody wants. And so any program in the country, I would hate for it to be a highest bidder situation, because I don't think that ultimately gets you where you want to go. But there are programs out there, like I've said, like Oregon, Auburn, Creighton, that have shown a way to make use of a rim protector, and in Auburn's case, somebody who isn't a 7-footer, to also develop him offensively to be one of the best college basketball players on earth.
And there is that ceiling, right? Like you said, the potential for this kid is limitless as what he can do as a post player. He is, without question, the number one player in the transfer portal as it stands right now on April 2nd. He is again, top 5 projected lottery pick in the 2026 NBA draft. Take away the whole ACL surgery and all that stuff. This kid is one of the best defensive players, one of the best defensive bigs to ever walk through Arizona State University. You started to see at the end of the season him start to develop more in terms of his offensive game. I don't know how much of that was just he had the ball in his hands a little bit more with BJ Freeman gone or what that was. But this is a kid that coming out of high school, they were talking about how well he can pass the ball. So we're talking about a lottery pick that is still 18 years old that can develop in terms of his post offense. He can play defense with the best of them in college sports. Oh, and he's starting to get a little bit of a 3-point shot. Like, sign me up, give him a blank check for whoever it is, and he is going to make your program better by far. Again, I know a lot of frustration still in the chat. I do want to get to that. I also want to talk about what's next for Bobby Hurley. What's next for Arizona State basketball? Can we put on that optimism cap one more time? We'll see on the other side of this quick break. Guys, I'm going to be honest with you. Tonight is a night that after everything that's gone on with ASU hoops, I'm going to need to indulge. I'm going to need to call up my friends over at Pure Edibles, go to one of the 130 dispensaries that Pure Edibles is actually available in Arizona, and I'm going to need to get some of those gummies to take the edge off. But for some of you, maybe you don't like gummies because they taste like weed. Well, look, Pure Edibles, they're a full-fledged candy company offering gummies, kicks, their version of Starburst, chews, soft candies like caramel, and then, of course, the hard candies as well. They actually taste like candy, and maybe even better is they list the effects on the tin, so you know exactly what you guys can expect. If you need sleep support, if you need to maybe be uplifted, if you need something in between, which is where I feel like I'm going to be later on this evening, go find yourself some Pure Edibles products from one of the over 130 dispensaries across Arizona. Look, yesterday I mentioned that right after ASU football spring practice, I had to stop at Circle K. I had to get a Gatorade to refuel the electrolytes. And then, of course, I had to get myself an energy drink to just keep on moving. Our friends over at Circle K, they have something for everybody. Do you need an energy drink? Do you need a sports drink? Do you need a snack? Does the snack need to taste like candy? Is it chips? Do we need beef jerky? They have literally everything. But the best part is they have got a way to help you save money every single day. That's right. We're talking Inner Circle. It's their free membership program that you can literally sign up for in the next 30 seconds. Go to the App Store, download the app, enter your email and phone number, and boom, you are an Inner Circle member. Next time you pull up to the pump, type in your phone number and you can start cashing in on those deals. Join Inner Circle for free by downloading that Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply. At participating locations, visit circlek.com for details. Will in the chat saying, JQ's dad specifically said that he's looking to surround himself with the right people, meaning developing him into a lottery pick. Money is a secondary factor. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me when you are a guy that is projected to be in the NBA, when you're projected to be a lottery pick, and you see that potential. I think everybody does. Then, yeah, money, I think, can be a secondary factor for a guy like Jayden Quaintance, who, again, 17, 18 years old. His payday will come. He will get it. Not to say that he wasn't getting paid a ridiculous amount of money at Arizona State as a 17-year-old, but that is something that I think you can probably look at and say, okay, well, yes, we want money, but we first want to go to a place where we know, A, we're going to succeed, and B, we're going to actually live up to that potential of being a lottery pick. And I think we both agree, again, that's not at Arizona State right now, not just for JQ, but for a number of players. So Ralph, I want to get to kind of the root of the issue as we have gone into it a little bit, but bounced around. What's next for Hurley in the offseason? Like how and I don't even think you can quote unquote fix it, because like we said, the number one player in the transfer portal is coming from Arizona State. But how do you stop the bleeding? Where are the Band-Aids? Like, how can you get this roster to a point where the fan base can at least look to next season in the Big 12, one of, if not the best conference in college basketball, and say, well, we got a fighting chance?
Whew, that's a big question. And I think that it's impossible to answer because it presupposes that Bobby Hurley's intent is to recapture the fan base. I'm not sure Bobby Hurley's intent has ever been to capture the fan base. And I want to say this because there's nobody in the world that I respect more than Kyle Dodd. He's an incredible person, and he's come on Sun Devil Spaces a million times to say the same thing over and over and over, that a lot of the time as a fan base, we get what we deserve. That if we that one of the things that would come along with showing up, and obviously this message isn't for people who spend their Wednesday nights, on X.com, the everything app, and chatting with each other about all things Sun Devils. Certainly, it doesn't necessarily apply to us, but it is a great place for everybody to kind of voice how they feel. Just like this is a great place for everybody to get in the chat and make their voice heard. But one point that he always brings up is, that you do get the product you deserve, and that our crowds have been awful and everything like that. So, is it the responsibility of the fans to provide an environment in which it is possible to win, or is it the responsibility of the people who have been granted stewardship of the program to court the fans? We know how the other major coach at this university feels about that particular topic. We also watched the new hire on the girls' end of basketball send a direct message to the fans and do some interviews right after that. What's your favorite Bobby Hurley sit down with the local media?
I would say when he was on this program for about 15 minutes and he told us that he did need on game day. I would say that's probably my favorite time, but that occurred 2 years ago.
Okay, yeah. And I've been on this show way too much, and my face shouldn't be on anything. So, and I don't have any goal. I'm not trying to court anything. I'm not trying to do, uh, it is it the responsibility of Bobby Hurley to court the fans? And I think that's a question that we have to ask ourselves. And if it is his responsibility, why isn't he? Because the after a decade of evidence and of you telling yourself, "Oh, they'll show up if we win," and then probably having it in the back of your mind that you resent that, right? You wish that you were in an environment that could just be provided for you. But I always put Nebraska football at the forefront of the fact that you can have the best fan base in the world who shows up 100,000 strong for a spring game and still have your football team only have one over 500 season in the last 8 years and then cancel your spring game. Right? Like Nebraska fans take the most abuse of anybody ever, and they keep showing up, and the product has not reflected them showing up. It happens in conjunction. And so when you say, like, what could potentially happen for Arizona State fans to gather themselves up, convince themselves to be excited, and buy into the 2025-2026 iteration of Sun Devil basketball, Well, if you're like me and you have a liberal arts degree from Arizona State that you went into debt for, you have a lifetime of making decisions that show that you're willing to get kicked down into the curb again. So I'll be there. And Bobby Hurley doesn't have to do anything to get me there. He doesn't have to do anything to get the people in the chat there. But the stands are going to continue to be empty because it's one thing to see your coach freak out if you win. It's one thing to go and see great players if they're going to score points or hit field goals at a rate above Allen Iverson's lowest efficiency in the NBA. But we don't have any of that. We have a disjointed offense that takes terrible shots. We have a coach that has spent the last 10 years riding the refs, who just happens to have a legendary, legendary college career that he can't even really ride on anymore because there are people who have kids that are recruitment age. There are people who have kids that are recruitment age who are too young to have watched him play in college. We say that again. There are kids being recruited now whose parents are too young to have really experienced Bobby Hurley's run. So we can't ride on the fact that that there's people who are in awe of his presence because they got to watch what I watched, which was back-to-back champions. He shares a last name with somebody else who won back-to-back championships, who decided to go out of his way to say that if Bobby had the resources that he had, Danny at UConn, that Bobby had the resources that he had, that he would have the results that he has. But I mean, that's like saying, like, hey, you put me in a 5-star restaurant, I'm gonna cook some good food. Like, cool. Well, you can't make a quesadilla at Taco Bell. So how can I even trust you? How can I get to the point where I have hope, where I want to show up? And you're not courting me. You're not going around making the local media runs. Like, they did a better job of selling Snow White after it was clear that nobody wanted to see this. For a million different reasons, they still had to go hit every press junket and answer every uncomfortable question. They still had to court people to scrape back every dollar so that, and it didn't end up being the biggest loss of their entire lifetimes. You still have to show up and work every single day. A lot more goes into it than just starving yourself on game day, screaming at a ref, landing a 4-star, and watching him finish at Portland State.
Oh, the pain, the pain, the pain. It's funny. I asked for, what are the Band-Aids? And we had a great comment from Will in the chat saying, as Taylor Swift said, bullets or Band-Aids don't fix bullet holes. And that's what it feels like for Arizona State. When I got up this morning.
These are Plaxico Burris bullet holes. We shot ourselves with our gun in our sweatpants.
Yeah. And there's not a way that you can really, like, again, it's like, oh, but you can't make excuses anymore. You know what I mean? I think that was, for me, and again, shame on me for this, back to the sad clown. I was at certain points over the last 2-3 years would try and make an excuse for it. Would try and say, oh, but there's this, and that. And let's call it for what it is. It's a toxic relationship. It's over. It needs to be over. Stop going back. Okay? I don't care at what happens this year. I don't care if it's an NCAA tournament team, because you can't win and be a flash in the pan. How many times has Dilly said it after only being here for 2 years, going into year 3? You're not trying to be a flash in the pan. You want to build a contender. You want to be a consistent powerhouse. And right now, you can look at what the last decade has been for Bobby Hurley, and it's been nothing short of a failure. You get 5-star, you get 4-star, and like we said earlier, you don't do anything with it. In fact, oftentimes they go to other schools and turn into what you thought they could be in Tempe. It's over. Break up and call it a day. At this point, I have been very, very short of saying that I think that Bobby Hurley shouldn't be the coach here. I try and refrain from having that level of opinion on this. But if you think that going into next season, that the fan base, the ones that do show up, aren't going to vocalize their immense level of justified frustration every single game, if you don't think that they are going to hop on X, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, and say just obscene things, which I'm not saying they should, but they're going to express themselves, and it's going to be nothing but anger because that is all you've given them for 10 years. I absolutely hate the argument of, but they've been to the tournament more times with Hurley than without. Well, guess what? If you go 3 of 10, you still failed. And that's what's happened. And not only have you gone 3 of 10, if we're realistically counting the times that Hurley has made the tournament, the first 4 in round of 64 is whatever. You don't play all year to get bounced in the very first round. You don't play all year to lose in Dayton, Ohio. You play so that you can still be playing. You play that so me, Kyle, and Eric don't have to come up with a troll graphic for if Arizona State wins in the Crown, we don't have to tweet, they made the Elite Eight. And right now, that hasn't been the case for Arizona State. It's, at this point in time, it's time to call it quits. And I'll get out of here on this note. I was very, very conscious this morning when I was getting ready to leave. I got myself ready, blah, 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 texted Ralph, and I was like, okay, I need to just make my cup of coffee on the way out. And I've got a number of different coffee mugs at my house. I had 2 clean. I had this one. It says you just got lit up. And I have a Jungle Book Bare Necessities one. You know what the bare necessities are? Means you have no worries. And I had that cup in my hand, and I said, you know what? Today's not the day. Arizona State got absolutely lit up this morning, and there's no other way to talk about it. Guys, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you enjoyed today's content, give us a follow, PHNX_Sun Devils. Follow the great Ralph Amsden, of course, at Ralph Amsden on X. Definitely, are we doing Sun Devil Spaces tonight, Ralph?
Yeah, we're doing Sun Devil Spaces, and I just want to give one message to the students, because I know you got current students that watch this show, and that's why I love PHNX, because you appeal to the current students. If you go to Devil's Hideaway 10 times, and your fake ID gets you in 3 times, but the bartender never takes it, you never get a drink, you don't do anything while you're there, that's not a good fake ID, and you did not have a good time.
That's perfect. Absolutely perfect way to shut her down. Guys, you can follow me at Anthony_Totri. You can follow Captain Redbeard at Coop Sports on social. Guys, we will see you on Thursday talking spring football. But in the meantime, go Devils. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.